and welcome to Decoding Your Canine. Discover the secrets of having a perfect dog, the masterclass series covering health, wellbeing, training, and behavior. I am your host, Ness Jones, and with me now is Megan Mars. She is from Canine of Mine. Welcome, Megan. Today we are talking about body language, canine body language, which is so important. Great. I know this is going to be a great discussion, but firstly, maybe you could just talk to us about who you are, what you do. I know you've got a dog site which is dedicated to helping owners better understand their dogs, which is obviously going to be, the link will be below this video as well. But yeah, tell us how you got into dog behavior and, you know, what are you passionate about?
Absolutely. So my name is Megan, and I've always, since I was a kid, absolutely adored dogs. As a kid, I would get on the ground and pretend to be a dog, and I begged my mom for years for a dog, and it took her many years to cave, but eventually she did. And so I had a childhood dog that I absolutely adored as a child. And then as an adult, I decided I really wanted to rescue my own dog from a rescue here in the US. And the dog I got ended up being very, very challenging. It really made me reevaluate all the ideas I had about what it meant to be a dog owner, what a dog really was, what that relationship was going to be in my life. And it inspired me to just really dig a lot deeper into dog psychology, understanding dogs more. And it's been a long road, but so rewarding. It's taught me so much, not just about dogs, but about people and my own behavior too. And it's been quite an experience. And I love helping share my experience with other people and help them understand their own dogs better as well.
That's lovely. And you've got a pity mix who's also a rescue. So did he come with his own set of problems as well? Or?
Oh, yes. He's the one who turned my life upside down.
Okay. And
Remy, the pit mix. That first year was honestly the hardest year of my life. I was went through a lot of pain and depression and ups and downs, and it was such a struggle. And I'm so happy to say we're in a much better place now. He is by no means a perfect dog, but we are doing so much better, and it's just been great.
Sorry, I'm getting a bath.
You are.
We're talking, so the title of the topic today is Translating Dog Body Language for Humans. Why is it important to understand dog body language?
Well, from a safety perspective, I think it's very important because, I think as humans, we really rely so much on verbal language. And yes, body language is a part of how humans interact too, but it's definitely very, very secondary to verbal language. And that's just not the way dogs communicate. That's not the way most animals communicate. And I think we a lot of times will not really take our dogs seriously unless they're vocalizing or verbalizing. And it's kind of interesting. I've seen, you always see those dreams about the future of a collar that can translate your dog's barks.
Yeah.
But in reality, that's just kind of a not really realistic idea, because that's just not how dogs communicate. You wouldn't translate a dog's bark to mean something. And really, they already say so much through their body language. We just need to be willing to take a minute to listen and evaluate. I think it's a struggle for people, because I think just like with positive reinforcement based training, it's really easy it's easier to wait until you see a behavior you don't like and try to correct that, rather than actively watching all the time to see what you want to reward your dog for. But that really is, in my opinion, the best way to train your dog. And with body language, it's a little bit similar. You have to constantly be checking in, looking at your dog, trying to basically learn a whole new language and try to see what they're trying to communicate to you. And I think it's not something that always comes naturally to us humans. So it can be a struggle, but body language is so important for building your relationship with your dog, making sure that you respect them and their consent, that they know they can trust you to see that if they are showing signs that they're uncomfortable, that you'll back off and you'll listen to them and you'll keep them safe that way and respect their boundaries. And then also for safety with having other people interact with your dog, especially children or strangers. I think a lot of people forget that dogs will tolerate a lot from us. I'll hug and kiss my dog. I know he's not a huge fan of it, but he will tolerate it from me. But a lot of dogs will tolerate it from people they love and know, but from strangers, they might be much less willing to go along with that. And that's when you get situations where you might have someone get bitten and it kind of feels like, oh, it happened out of nowhere. But really, if you know how to look at dog body language, it's not really ever out of nowhere.
Yeah. And it always distresses me, and I'm sure it does you too, when you see those videos of a child trying to interact with a dog and mum's got the video camera out and the dog's giving all these signals saying, whoa, I am really uncomfortable with this, and everyone's going, oh, isn't that cute?
It's so sad because you can tell the dog is trying so hard to be like, please help me, like I don't like this, and there's like, oh, it's so cute. I also, with social media, I see so many things where it like just breaks my heart sometimes, like people having videos of like, oh, like kind of shaming their dog for doing something. Yeah. And the thing is, you see you'll see the dogs like roll their eyes, and the owner will be like, oh, you're ignoring me, don't you roll your eyes, and will escalate and get kind of more aggressive and loud, when really that dog isn't like rolling their eyes the way a human child might to show disrespect. They're actually, that's like a whale eye, and they're very scared, and it just breaks my heart to see that. And then also people calling their dogs dramatic sometimes for expressing themselves. I think it can definitely feel like, oh, maybe that reaction isn't necessary, but dogs don't put on a display like to be overly dramatic for like show. You know, if they're upset by something, even if we think it's kind of silly, that's a genuine feeling. The feeling they're having is like they're upset and stressed. And I think it's important to respect that and not just dismiss it. For dogs, just as much for human kids too. I think human children can do things where like, oh, calm down, it's not that big of a deal. But to them, it is a big deal. And it's important to recognize that.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, it would be lovely if they could talk to us, though, wouldn't it?
It would.
I mean, I know you, I mean, obviously, you know, if we understand what they're trying to tell us, if we understand their body language. So what are some of the common signs that show that a dog might be uncomfortable? Also, what are some of the signs that show us that a dog's not uncomfortable? You know, like the opposite of that, you know, when they're actually really happy, or, you know.
Absolutely. As far as discomfort, I think the most obvious, at least the ones I consider the easiest, are whale eye, which is that kind of also called moon eyes. You can see the big whites of a dog's eye. That's a pretty clear thing to notice visually. I would also say lip licking is a really big one. And I've even seen, I don't know much about other animal body language, but I was telling this to a friend once, and she noticed that her cat would lick its lips whenever her boyfriend came over. And she was like, oh, I wish you hadn't told me that, because it like makes me really sad. And I'm like, sorry, that's just
cats are funny, because I adore cats. I used to have two, but I've had a few throughout my life, but I don't at the moment. But they often, you know, when they're feeling uncomfortable or embarrassed, they'll start I mean, dogs do this as well, but I think cats do it a lot more. They'll start scratching.
Yeah, that's a hard one, because I feel like scratching, and then I would say yawning, certain kinds of stretching, and some other things they can be stress signs, but it's so like context based, and I feel like humans really struggle with that, like, oh, well, the dog's yawning, but we just woke up, and like, you know, it can be kind of hard to, and scratching and sniffing are some of those too, where like a lot depends on like the
something else
happening.
And even lip licking, because I mean, did they just have a drink of water, did they just eat? That whole context is
there's a lot of nuance for sure. As far as signs that your, you know, dog is feeling good, I mean, I think it's hard sometimes because at least I find myself feeling this way. I want displays of affection from my dog that are very forward. Like I love dog kisses personally, and my dog is not a big licker, but you know, he'll like lean against.
You need a Malinois. Malinois are really affectionate.
I saw you getting a nice bath there. I'm jealous. I'm like, oh.
He's kind of annoying when he gets up on you, because he's always just like muh, muh in your face. But the other, like Bertha in particular, she just gets up and she'll come and lie on this arm here, and then she'll kind of readjust, and she'll have both her legs around my waist, and she'll just hug me like that.
Piggyback style. It's so cute.
It is. Anyway, go on. Sorry. Yeah.
That's adorable. Well, that's obviously a very good display of affection.
Yeah.
But I think for Remy, who's a little more sometimes reserved like that, it'll just be like leaning against you sometimes, or even for dogs, just like being in the same room as you is like that. Like, I like hanging out with you and I like you.
I've got to tell you something. Years ago, that Rottweiler on the wall, Rottweilers are leaners as well. They love leaning on people when they're, when they love them. I was talking to this woman who called herself an animal behaviorist, and I didn't know anything back then. I think it was that Rottweiler, yeah. No, I know a lot more now. And now I know her advice was completely wrong. But she said, don't let him sit with his back to you, because he's showing that he disregards you and he's being dominant. Now, of course, I would say if he's sitting with his back to me, he trusts me.
Absolutely. But quite the opposite, really.
Exactly. Yeah. But she was, oh gosh, yeah. And now it makes me, I'm still cross about it that she told me that, because what else has she told other people that is completely inaccurate? Anyway, carry on.
It's very sad. I have a friend whose parents have a dog they're struggling with, and they hired like a canine police dog trainer recently who's giving a lot of advice that I don't agree with. And, even like, I'm not a huge fan of prong collars, but I also like understand why people use them too. But this person was advising them to like leave the collar on all the time in the house, even. That's so unsafe. And like, nobody who knows anything about dogs and how to use those tools would recommend leaving it on your dog all the time in the house. That's so unsafe. It's
awful.
I'm just like, it like really upsets me, but
yeah.
I think when you're really struggling with a dog, sometimes it's easy to just, if someone promises you an easy solution, it feels like, oh, I have to try it. I have to take it. But usually the shortcuts aren't really the legitimate ways.
Part of it is, if you don't know anything, you trust somebody that knows something. So if it was like, I'm not very good at finances, or, money kind of thing. I can't, when you throw a mathematical equation at me, I'm just like, my brain goes blank. So if someone was saying, well, you need to do this with your finances or something, and they knew I thought they knew what they were doing, even if they didn't, they know more than me. So I therefore would trust them. But yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think also our goals with dogs have changed a lot. I think in the past, if your only goal was like, I need a dog to do what I say, and that's all I want out of this relationship, and some of those methods are going to get you that goal. But I think a lot of us now, our goals are kind of having a good relationship with our dog and having a real connection there and love. And we want our dogs to feel safe and comfortable with us. And in order to achieve that, our methods have to be a little more different than they would if we were just trying to achieve a very specific goal that's only about ourselves,
So I guess one of the things with body language, would you say different breeds have got different way of expressing themselves?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest thing with breeds is depending on the dog's face shape or tail or ears, it can be a little harder to read body language. So for example, a dog with a shorter snout, you're not gonna be able to see the changes in facial expressions. For example, like my dog, when he is really stressed by something, his forehead gets all wrinkly and he like on his face. Whereas with a pug or a dog with some like wrinkles or a shorter snout,
the whites of the eyes for the pug too. So you kind of look at that and say, oh, they've got whale eye. No, that's just their normal.
Because their eyes are a little more bulgy, right? Yeah. So that can be hard. And then with a shorter tail or a docked tail, you're not going to get as much expression from the tail shape. Or even if like you have a husky where the tail shape is naturally upright, then you might not be able to read as much expression in it. Actually, I remember hearing something recently that said, it's a common issue where a lot of other dogs aren't super fans of huskies, that they kind of clash a lot. And I heard that the reason because of that is huskies naturally have a very intimidating posture, even when they're not trying to be intimidating. The shape of their tail and their upright ears make them look much more aggressive or kind of, very strong posturing. And that makes other dogs very uncomfortable, even if the husky is like totally chill and isn't trying to be a jerk or anything. And
that's
pretty
interesting. Yeah.
Mhm.
I wonder what other sort of genetic stuff, I mean, I read that about, the pugs, because of their bulging eyes, they do look a bit starey, don't they? So, some dogs can, dogs with those sort of eyes, maybe some other dogs might look at that and say, oh, why you
yeah, like that dog's
yeah.
kind of making me uncomfortable. They look freaked out. Yeah. Or even my uncle had a Rhodesian Ridgeback that I loved as a kid, and they have that stripe of fur down the middle. It's kind of tufted, and dogs a lot of times will raise their hackles when they're upset about something. And I wonder if that could signal different things to different dogs, having that kind of raised fur. There's definitely a lot of areas like that where you wonder how they read each other and how we might have a harder time reading them.
So if somebody was trying to look at their dog and say, and start to educate themselves in body language, I assuming they're looking at the whole of the dog. So we're talking tail courage, maybe stiffness through the back, or is the back roached? What other things would people be looking at?
Yeah, the tail shape is definitely huge for dogs. It's a little hard because, I think we all grew up as children with the classic, a wagging tail means the dog is friendly, which isn't really the case. My own dog can be, he's, I don't want to call him aggressive, but like he's very reactive. And so when he's excited by something, his tail will wag, but that doesn't necessarily mean I would tell someone, oh yeah, come on over and say hi, like he's experiencing a lot of feelings right now. So, that can be a little tricky, but definitely a very low and tucked tail is a pretty good indicator that a dog is pretty scared. Usually I know there's like different directions for tail wags, which I've honestly haven't quite been able to like really get good at seeing, like if it wags a little bit to the right versus left. A very like high tail usually can be another sign of kind of excitement. That
Rottweiler on the wall behind me, if I went out, my husband would say when you came back, his tail wouldn't wag, it would start doing the helicopter. It's like he's about to take off.
Circles are good. Circles are very good. Those like big sweeping circles are usually a pretty good sign that a dog's feeling good and happy. Yeah. And the ear shape is a good one too. Like for tucked ears is usually like uncomfortable or scared. Relaxed ears is chill. But again, it kind of depends on the breed. Like dogs will have a different like ear kind of position naturally sometimes.
With the pointy-eared dogs like I've got now, it's quite easy to see what they're doing. But with the floppy ears ones, you've got to be a little bit more sort of
because you have their whole ear kind of like hiding what is going on with the ear position. I think it's kind of easy to look at like the base of the ear sometimes and see how it's rotating and moving. But for people at home, I feel like one rule that I will say, I don't always practice this, but I think it's a very good rule in general, especially with a new dog in your home, is to not get into the habit of approaching the dog. Instead, like letting the dog approach you, calling the dog. And if the dog comes over, then, you can have a little pet session. And if they stay where they are or don't come towards you, then you got to take that as a respectful no, thank you.
I think people find that so hard to do. My one of my girls, she's she is okay with people if she is the one doing the approaching. If they try to engage her, she doesn't like it at all. The best way for her to love someone is, or if you want her to love her, hang on, if you come into my home and you want to have a decent relationship with her, the best thing to do is ignore her. Yeah,
absolutely. I think so many people think that like, I need to show the dog I'm friendly by petting them and touching them,
leaning over,
and being like hugging them. But really, a way to show a dog that you can trust them is to give them space and show that you're willing to like respect their boundaries and let them decide if they want to interact with you or not.
But how much when we were kids where we taught, if you see a strange dog, you put your arm out.
Yeah, right.
You put your arm out and let them smell it. But for a fearful dog, that can actually be really confronting.
Yeah, it's quite rude. Like, ooh, it's better than a lot of other things you could do. But yeah, the best thing is to just let a dog approach you and I mean, I've had so many times in the past where I didn't know better, where I would like approach
Same.
dogs that clearly did not want to be touched by me at all. And I don't know how I never got bitten, because I was like, whoa. But it's just, and it's so sad. I see people, I'll get some messages from people sometimes saying, oh, I have this new dog in my house. Well, they don't say, they're like, oh, I've had this dog a week, and whenever I go over to pet it, it growls at me. And I'm like, this dog just got into your house and is so overwhelmed and like feels so stressed. Like,
ignore it.
You just have to give the dog some space and let them, feel comfortable.
Yeah. So other body language signs, how about the carriage of the mouth? And
yeah, the carriage of the mouth is interesting. So I can notice it in my dog. I think it does take some time to notice it in your own dog, but as far as what like a tight mouth looks like, that's usually a good indicator of, kind of fearfulness or unsureness. I'd say for a relaxed mouth, you want like an open, loose mouth so the tongue is kind of hard too, because with panting, it's very normal for dogs to pant, of course, when they're hot. And usually that's like a very droopy tongue, kind of like almost like falling out of their mouth. Whereas a more like tucked in tongue that's like in the mouth, and a lot of heavy panting can be stress related. Like even today I was walking my dog in a new area, and he had this like he was like panting really hard, and almost like drool around his mouth. And I was like, oh, it was like kind of it's a good stress, right? Because excitement shares a lot of overlap with stress, and it can be hard sometimes to distinguish that. But I knew he was having a great time. He was just like having a really great time, like a little too great of a time. So like I was trying to help just like moderate him and like give him a lot of space from triggers and other dogs, and just make sure he could be in a position where he felt good. But yeah, the panting is big, and the mouth shape.
And I guess if a dog's like, if you're out with your dog and it's like doing, like, and then suddenly closes its mouth and gets that hard stare, I mean, that's telling you something, isn't it? What would you say? That's
absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. That means your dog is having big feelings about something. And again, it's like stress / arousal is very interesting, because there's a lot of overlap between like excitement and stress. Like my own dog, I deal with this all the time when we have guests over. He's like mostly very excited, but there's a little bit of fear in there too. And you have just a lot of like big feelings, but he's not always sure like how he feels about it. But the feelings are big. It's just like he's not even sure what they are, And I feel like a lot of dogs have that experience too. So sometimes that like, if a dog sees someone they know, they might close their mouth and they're like, oh, they're so excited to see them. But they can also be like, who the heck is that? Like, I don't know how I feel about that,
Yeah. And I mean, if you know your dog well, I mean, you can probably avoid things like biting people or attacking other dogs, or even being attacked by an approaching dog, if you can read that dog in that split second that it takes. Because absolutely. I guess you would agree, would you, that, I guess it's like us, but we're learning a different language, but it can be that quick, can't it? Like it's those, if you know how to read your dog, you have to be kind of quick sometimes, though, don't you? Would you say?
Sure. I think it's like most important to kind of make smart decisions, like based on the past experiences you've had with your dog. Like I really don't take a ton of risks with Remy. He's actually okay with other dogs, but I don't really let him approach other dogs out on a walk. So it's not worth the risk. It's not worth the like potential of it being an issue. I want only good experiences for him. But yeah, you have to like think about how your dog has behaved in the past, what they're okay with and not okay with, and then kind of use that information to decide, okay, am I going to put my dog in a situation where I'm going to be on alert and really keeping a careful eye on his body language so that I know when I have to like get out or move away, or do I want to avoid that altogether? And that's, everyone has their own, how like risk averse they want to be with that stuff. I think it's great to like challenge your dog in safe ways. I actually, a while back, had a life coach where we did these like comfort zone challenges. And the goal was to always do something that was like uncomfortable, but like still achievable, like not so far out that it felt like terrifying and impossible. And I think sometimes with dogs, especially dogs who like weren't socialized much when they were younger, or just have some are sensitive soul dogs, it's important to kind of think about it that way a little bit. Like what situation can I put the dog in where like might be a little challenging for them, but like I know they can do it, and it's a reasonable thing to get them to try to do, versus what do I not want to just even consider.
Yeah. And what about I know dogs meeting other dogs. I think some dogs don't understand canine body language themselves. It's like they've missed this important part of, whether it's mum didn't teach them, or mum never had the opportunity of teaching them or something. But when they interact with other dogs, they don't seem to be giving off the appropriate body language.
Absolutely. I feel like I've gone through that with my own dog. I think he definitely was not socialized probably at all as a puppy, and he has a very hard time reading other dogs, responding appropriately to other dogs. And I think with dogs like that, that's why people say dog parks is such a terrible idea, because you have all these dogs mixed together. The owners don't usually have a great awareness of like what their dog's like comfort level is, and they don't really know how to read the other dogs. And it's just kind of a recipe for disaster in some situations. So at least for me, I've done some things with Remy where I took him to a trainer who had some dogs on campus where she knew the temperaments of all the dogs really well. And we had Remy muzzled for safety and on a long line. And so when he was, maybe doing something inappropriate, you could like pull him back in with the long line and give him a break. And, a lot of structure in place to make sure you aren't having other dogs in a situation where they're uncomfortable, and my dog or someone else's dog is kind of being like, not picking up on the signals, like really making their dog uncomfortable, because that's not really fair to anybody. Even if it's in the name of training your dog, it's not really fair to put other dogs through that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what about us giving the dog their signals back? So if there was a dog approaching, could you maybe yawn and do a look away like that? Would that make that dog, because we're a human and they're a dog, would they actually recognize that by doing that, do you think?
That's a really good question. I would be inclined to think it wouldn't work as well, just because dogs kind of like know we're not human. Honestly, I don't know.
Dogs know we're not dogs.
Oh yeah, dogs know we're not human. Yeah, they know we're not dogs. But I definitely think dogs can pick up on our body language. Like I've noticed when I walk Remy and see other dogs, if I like tense up, that can, definitely make him a little more alert too. Whereas if I kind of act kind of casual and walk away, he usually is more liable to feel that way too. So yeah, it'd be interesting as far as the yawning and lip blinking. Maybe I'll try that with my dog.
A look away, because it's, I've mentioned this before, I think another interview, but I did this fascinating thing. I had those two dogs on the wall behind me, my Rottweiler and my Mal. My Rottweiler's passed now. But I was out in our backyard and I videoed, it was 1.5 minutes and they were playing. And it was, when I came back inside, I put it on the computer and I slowed it down and I went through it second by second. And it was so interesting watching everything they do. There'd be a play bow and then a look away and then a yawn, or, and they just went for 1.5 minutes. Took me ages to go through it, but it was so interesting. It's so, okay, even when we're, during that minute while I was watching it live, there was so much stuff I missed that I picked up by going through it. So yeah,
it's amazing to watch dogs play. I wish I got to do it more, because my dog, I don't really take to dog parks. He doesn't play a lot with their dogs, but I love watching dogs play because, like you said, there's so many things happening. And I feel like the only way to understand it is to do what you did, record it and like play it on slow-mo, repeat stuff, because there is like a million little things happening every second. And it's pretty incredible to watch. It's very interesting.
Yeah. My old Roddy bitch, she had the best dog body communication. If she met a strange dog, she knew how to put them at ease. And it was really interesting watching her. So she used all those calming signals that dogs have. And, she would be like, okay, this dog's uncomfortable. She wasn't like that with all strange dogs. Like, sometimes she'd go into the kind of herding kind of prey, let's play kind of stuff. But if she realized the dog was uncomfortable, she'd be doing all the calming signals to make that dog comfortable, and then they'd be best buddies. So it was fascinating.
Sweetheart.
Yeah, she was probably the best dog I've ever had, which is, shouldn't say that in front of these three.
Don't let them hear.
So what are some of the common ways that people actually misinterpret their dog's feelings?
Well, we talked earlier about the eye roll thing. I think that happens a lot, where it's so easy for us to project either, what we expect a human child to do, or just what our body language would be. Even like a yawn, I think, you see people being like, "Oh, am I boring you?" kind of thing. And it's so usually the opposite of what the dog is experiencing. It's very frustrating. But, hugs and kisses are another big one that, like, I think people will really try to justify their dog liking that. And a lot of dogs don't. A lot of dogs will tolerate it. And I'm not saying like I hug and kiss my dog too, even when I know he doesn't love it. But like, I think it's important to recognize that I'm doing something that my dog probably isn't super thrilled about. And I'm going to choose to take that risk because I know my dog. I can read him. I know if he's really uncomfortable. Whereas if you think, oh, my dog loves hugs all the time, and you let strangers come up and hug your dog and children when your dog isn't super jazzed about it, it can be quite a problem and quite dangerous.
Yeah. And what about kind of their body language is obviously telling us something. Does your dog have a right to consent? Like, how do we frame that?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
It's something I've thought about a lot. I'm actually I'm very passionate about dog consent, and I have a lot of friends who think I'm crazy and do not understand that at all. And obviously, like, we're going to have to do things to our dogs they're not going to like. For example, my dog hates baths, but he's very, very itchy. So I actually have to bathe him quite a bit. And we've been working a lot on trying to help him opt in to the situation by, like, I'll put like a sticky licky mat on the bathtub with peanut butter. That usually helps a lot. I also do have some anxiety medication I'll give him before a bath just to help it be a more positive experience. And my goal one day is for him to be super excited about baths, but we're definitely in that area where, like, he's not super happy about it, but I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible. And I'm going to put in a lot of work to try to get him in the future to fully consent to those things. And I think that's kind of the goal. Like, obviously it's going to be hard to get our dog to consent to everything, but I think our goal should be to try to work towards a place where they're going to want to do it. Because at least, I mean, a lot of dogs, my dog is very food motivated. So if I just practice enough and make it easy enough, he'll probably opt for the food,
Yeah. I guess part of that whole consent thing, and that was a big topic that kind of ran through the last summit I put on, the whole consent and choice and giving the dog some autonomy. But it's so important then, if you're going to go down that route, to understand what your dog's trying to tell you in terms of their behavior, but also their body language. So I guess if he stops licking the licky mat, he's saying, well, I'm not really happy about this. But he might show you in other ways, like maybe his ear or tail or what have you.
Right. Absolutely. My dog, it's probably a little TMI, but he has some anal gland issues, and we've been working on how he can be more comfortable with me. Like, I've just started with, like, just trying to touch his butt a little bit while he's licking something. And if he stops licking, then I know, okay, we're going to take a break from that. But the poor guy, I went to the vet and was telling them, and they expressed his anal glands, and he had a little outburst. Yeah. I guess he bit the ponytail of a woman doing it. So the next time I went to the vet, he was like shaking in my lap, which he never does. And I was like, poor guy, like, he did not like that at all. So that's a big thing we're gonna be working on. And I mean, for him, like, the way he expressed he didn't like that whenever I try to do that is just kind of like looking at me very offendedly, and he'll tuck his tail really close to his body and kind of scoot away and just look very, very distraught that I would dare try to do such a thing.
Yeah. It's canine body language is such a I don't know. We could talk about this for hours, really, couldn't we? I mean, I guess the take-home message is start learning what your dog is trying to tell you. I mean, because I work specifically in separation anxiety, my thing is, I need my clients to understand what their dog looks like when it's happy and relaxed, so they can identify what it looks like when it's uncomfortable, stressed, anxious, etc., etc. And that's a core part of the programs and the work I do with them. But it's just I think when we start going down that road with my clients, at least, I think it's quite fun for them, right? So, when you're out and about and your dog's out with you, see what they're doing what do they do when they see their best friend? What do they do when they see something that they're, somebody walking down the street with the umbrella? And I think it builds relationship, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's so wonderful to be able to have a communication like that with your dog and be able to see like what they're thinking. And, dogs can see how we're feeling too. Like I love getting excited with Remy about something, like, oh, what's that bird? Like, oh my gosh, let's go look at it, and seeing him get excited. And it's just so sweet and fun. And I think it opens up so many doors. I think some people get a little, I don't want to say like in denial about it, but they don't like the idea of thinking that they've been doing something that's been upsetting their dog, or that like, oh, my dog actually doesn't like this thing I've been doing to them for years. And it can definitely be like sad when you love an animal and feel so connected to them and then realize like you've been accidentally doing something that upsets them. But the best way to get past that is just, don't do it again, or just pay more attention. Just like know what's going on with your dog. It's okay to make mistakes. We all do. Like we talk to each other as humans and say things that upset other people all the time. That's just part of living life. And, the only way you get better at it is through practice.
Exactly. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So you can't beat yourself up for something that you don't even know about. So I hope nobody watching this is starting to go, oh gosh, and feel guilty. But be kind to yourself, and just realize that you if you didn't know, now you do. And which brings me to your free gift to the viewers, which is all about body language. So do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure.
Below the video, that's why I'm going like that.
For that guide, I put together some classic examples of different body language signs and talked about what to look for in your dog, kind of pinpoint exactly what in that picture is showing different body language. So we have stress signs, we have fear, and we have some play and relaxed body language in there as well too. So it's a great starting point if you just want to get a visual look. It might be a little different for your dog, but it's going to give you a nice base to go off of as you try to read your own dog's body language.
Yeah, and remembering that they're all different too. So, But one last question. You've heard of those buttons that dogs can push if you use them? And what are your thoughts on them?
I think they're very interesting. I've actually been trying to work on them with my own dog. I kind of get a little, the thing is he'll realize it gets some kind of reaction from me, and then I'll just kind of like do it any old time. I was trying to do the play button with him, and he just, when I was away for a weekend, my mom was watching him and she was like, oh, he kept hitting the play button. So I gave him treats, and I was like, no, that's not right. It's so hard. If he hits the play button, I have to drop everything and play with him because I need him to get the connection. So you do have to be ready to like really invest a lot of attention in the buttons and being able to respond to them like whenever they're out. So I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I love watching Bunny the dog on TikTok do the buttons. There is some debate about like how much the dog is really knows they're communicating. I mean, as far as like play, food, I think the dog very much knows, the meaning behind that. But some of these complicated sentences Bunny is making about like depression and asking if she's a human or a dog, it's very interesting. I hesitate. I do wonder like what is really going on there, but it's pretty cool. Fluent Pet, they're a company who makes the kind of like most well-known buttons, but they're doing a whole study on dog communication to try to bridge this gap of dogs and words, and it's very interesting stuff for sure.
It is interesting. I mean, I know people that have little doorbells or even just a bell hanging out. So, dog wants to go out for a wee or whatever, they can ding the bell. But I have never gone down that road because I don't want my dog to decide that it's going out 5 times a night and you get ding, 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 ding.
That's definitely what can end up happening with those for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't. I mean, but that's interesting about the play. So next time your mum comes, you'll have to put them away.
Yeah, put it away before again. He was just like smacking it all the time.
I'm bored.
I thought it was a toy. Like he was like, "Oh my god, this is so fun!" I was like,
"What other ones have you got?" Then you got play.
I got play and treat. Those are the only ones I'm working on right now. But I do want to do like one for going outside in the yard versus going for a walk. Okay. I mean, I feel like I already know when Remy wants to go for a walk. It's usually that like 11 a.m. time where I should have already walked him an hour ago, and he's just like staring at me like, hurry up, what are you doing? But I'd love to have a button for him to press just to really nail it in. And I do a lot of enrichment activities for Remy, so he usually gets like 1 licky mat a day. So I'd love to have a button for a licky mat or a chew, or a shredding activity. He loves to shred stuff, and just being able to give him a little more choice in what he's doing throughout the day, I think would be really great for him. Yeah, he's a smart dog. He needs a lot of engagement, and I think that'd be nice for him.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Megan. It's been lovely chatting to you. And click the link below and download. All your other links will be below this video as well. But yeah, the download that toolkit or the decoder kit, because I think that's going to get you started. Anybody watching this, and then start. Just do more and more and more. Observe your dog. I guess that's the important thing, isn't it? Start observing your dog.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're out walking them, get off your phone and be present.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Megan. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. That was so fun. I loved it.
It was fun. Yeah.